The library smelled like old books and candy corn, which was fitting for Halloween. I'd spent 3 hours helping run the children's costume contest, watching tiny witches and superheroes parade across our makeshift stage, judging creativity while parents took endless photographs. It was 7:30 p.m. when I finally pulled into my driveway in Salem, Massachusetts, exhausted but satisfied. The house was dark, expected, since Rachel was supposed to have picked up Emma and Lucas hours ago to take them trick-or-treating. They'd be halfway through the neighborhood by now, Emma dressed as a scientist and Lucas as Spider-Man, collecting enough candy to fuel nightmares and sugar rushes for weeks. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. I grabbed my bag from the passenger seat, noticed the jack-o'-lanterns I'd carved with the kids yesterday sitting dark on the porch. I'd forgotten to light them before leaving for the library. Small oversight on a night when every house on the block glowed with Halloween spirit. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Nothing unusual there. But when I pushed the door open, cold air hit my face. Not the comfortable indoor temperature I'd left behind, but genuine cold, like someone had opened windows or the back door. I could see it from the front hallway, 20 feet away through my living room and kitchen. Wide open, swaying slightly in October wind, revealing my backyard where dead leaves scattered across grass that needed one final mowing before winter. My heart started pounding in that immediate, animal way that precedes rational thought. I'd locked that door. I always locked that door. Had locked it specifically before leaving because Rachel had mentioned wanting to come in through the back to grab the kids' costumes from the guest room. Emma? Lucas? My voice came out uncertain, hopeful. Maybe they'd come back for something. Maybe Rachel had forgotten to close the door properly. Maybe there was a simple explanation. Silence answered me. Not even the TV murmuring or music from Emma's iPad or Lucas's endless questions about everything from dinosaurs to why the sky changes colors. I moved through my house slowly, turning on lights, checking rooms. The living room looked normal. Furniture in place, TV off, everything as I'd left it. But in the kitchen, I stopped. A chair was overturned. Not violently, but wrong, lying on its side near the table like someone had stood up too quickly and knocked it over. And the wall phone, the old landline I kept mainly for emergencies, dangled from its cord, the receiver torn from the base with enough force to crack the plastic. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. Kids? My voice shook now. Rachel? The guest room upstairs was where I'd hung the Halloween costumes yesterday after making final adjustments. Emma's white lab coat with her name embroidered on the pocket, Lucas's Spider-Man suit with attached mask. The hangers were there, swaying slightly from the door I'd just opened. The costumes were gone. I pulled out my cell phone with trembling hands, called Rachel. It rang 5 times, went to voicemail. Rach, it's Mom. Where are you? Where are the kids? The back door was open and I'm worried. Call me immediately. Tried Emma's iPad. The family tracking app showed it offline. Lucas didn't have a phone yet, too young at 6. Tried Rachel again. Voicemail again. Something was very, very wrong. I was heading back downstairs to call the police when I saw it. In the hallway mirror, the full-length antique mirror that had belonged to my mother, that hung between the living room and kitchen. Words written in lipstick, bright red, almost the color of blood, in handwriting I didn't recognize. They paid for your sin. My legs went weak. I grabbed the doorframe for support, staring at those 5 words that made no sense and every sense simultaneously. Someone had been in my house. Someone had taken the children's costumes. Someone had left a message about sin and payment and my grandchildren. If you're watching, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where in the world you're from. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I called 911 with hands that could barely hold the phone. 911. What's your emergency? My grandchildren are missing. Someone broke into my house. There's a message on my mirror. My voice broke. Please, you have to help me. Emma and Lucas Morrison, ages 8 and 6. Their mother was supposed to pick them up hours ago, but she's not answering her phone, and the kids are gone, and someone wrote a threat on my mirror. Ma'am, slow down. What's your address? I gave it, along with descriptions of the children, their last known whereabouts, Rachel's phone number. The dispatcher asked questions I could barely process. Had I seen anyone suspicious? Were there signs of forced entry? Had I touched anything? The back door was open, I managed. I locked it this morning, I know I did. And the costumes, their Halloween costumes are missing. Why would someone take their costumes? Officers are on their way, ma'am. I need you to leave the house immediately and wait outside for police. Don't touch anything else. But the kids, the best way to help them is to preserve the scene. Go outside now, Mrs. Cole. I went, though everything in me wanted to tear the house apart looking for clues. Stood on my front porch in 45-degree October darkness while trick-or-treaters wandered past. Teenagers mostly, too old for costumes but still collecting candy, their laughter grating against my terror. The police arrived within 8 minutes. 2 patrol cars, lights flashing, but no sirens. Officer Martinez and Officer Chen, both young, both professional, both initially skeptical in the way cops get on Halloween night when people call about pranks and mischief. Mrs. Cole, you said your daughter was supposed to pick up your grandchildren? Yes, at 6 p.m. to take them trick-or-treating, but she never showed up, and now they're gone, and there's writing on my mirror, and I was crying now. Couldn't stop. Something's wrong. I know my daughter. She'd never just not show up, not call, nothing. Something happened to her. Officer Chen was taking notes while Officer Martinez examined the back door with a flashlight. No signs of forced entry, he called out. Could your daughter have a key? Yes, but she'd have called. She'd have texted. My phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. I answered it before the officers could stop me. Hello? Mrs. Cole? A woman's voice, professional, strained. This is Dr. Patel from Salem Hospital. I'm calling about your daughter, Rachel Morrison. The world tilted. Officer Chen caught my elbow, steadied me. What happened? Is she okay? She's been admitted to our ICU. She was found unconscious in her car in the hospital employee parking lot around 6:15 p.m. We believe she was assaulted. Mrs. Cole, she's in a coma. You need to come to the hospital immediately. The children, I whispered. My grandchildren, Emma and Lucas. Were they with her? A pause that lasted forever. No children were with her, ma'am. Just your daughter, alone in her car. I looked at Officer Martinez, at the message still visible through my front window, reflected in the mirror. They paid for your sin. Someone took them, I said, my voice eerily calm despite the screaming in my head. Someone hurt Rachel and took my grandchildren, and they left me a message about sin. We need to find them, now. Officer Martinez's expression shifted from skeptical to alert. Show me this message. We went inside, all of us, and stood in front of the mirror. The officers photographed it from every angle, called for backup, started asking harder questions. Had I received threats recently? Did I have enemies? Was there anyone from my past who might hold a grudge? I'm a retired elementary school teacher, I said, bewildered. I spent 35 years teaching second grade. Who would? And then, like lightning, a memory, a child's face, terrified and angry, a courtroom, testimony I'd given that destroyed a family, a name I hadn't thought about in almost 2 decades. Dylan, I whispered. Dylan Foster. Oh my God. Who's Dylan Foster? Officer Chen asked, pen ready. A student I had 18 years ago. I testified that his adoptive parents were abusing him. They went to prison. He went into the foster system. I sat down hard on my couch, pieces clicking together into a nightmare. He drew pictures in class, dark pictures of families being torn apart. He told the school counselor that someone would pay for taking his family away. He was 8 years old. And where is he now? I don't know. I lost track after the trial. But if he's 26 now, I looked at the message on the mirror. If he blames me for what happened to him, if he thinks my grandchildren should pay for my sin, Officer Martinez was already on his radio, calling for detectives, for an Amber Alert, for everything. But I knew, with the sick certainty that comes from 35 years of teaching children, that we were already behind. Dylan Foster had planned this. Halloween night, when children in costumes were everywhere, when chaos masked intent. He'd attacked Rachel, taken Emma and Lucas, and left me a message. My grandchildren had 3 hours, maybe less, and I had to find them before Dylan's twisted sense of justice destroyed everything I loved. Salem Hospital at 9 p.m. on Halloween was controlled chaos. Parents bringing in kids who'd eaten too much candy, teenagers who'd done stupid things on dares, the usual holiday mayhem. But the ICU was different, quiet, sterile, the particular hush that surrounds serious injury. Rachel lay in a bed surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed, keeping her alive while her brain tried to heal from whatever trauma had put her here. Her face was bruised, swollen on the left side. Bandages wrapped her head. The doctor said she'd been struck repeatedly with something heavy, possibly the tire iron found in her car. Will she wake up? I asked Dr. Patel, holding Rachel's limp hand. We don't know. The next 48 hours are critical. Brain swelling is our main concern right now. I wanted to stay, to sit vigil, to be there when Rachel opened her eyes. But Emma and Lucas needed me more. They needed me functional, focused, finding them. Detective James Rodriguez met me in the ICU waiting room. I recognized him immediately, even though he'd retired 5 years ago. We'd worked together when I was teaching, when child welfare cases intersected with my classroom. "Maggie," he said, pulling me into a brief hug. "I heard what happened. I'm consulting on the case." "Dylan Foster," I said immediately. "It's him, James. It has to be. We're looking into it. But Maggie, I need you to walk me through everything. Every detail about Dylan, about what happened 18 years ago, about why he'd target you now." We sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs while I reconstructed history. Dylan Foster, 8 years old, showing up to my second-grade class with bruises I couldn't ignore. The calls to CPS, the investigation that revealed systematic abuse, his adoptive parents beating him, starving him, locking him in closets, my testimony that helped convict them. Dylan was removed immediately, I explained, put into emergency foster care while his adoptive parents faced criminal charges. They got 15 years each. But Dylan, he didn't see it as rescue. He saw it as me destroying his family. Did he threaten you? Not directly, but he drew pictures. One I still remember, a house on fire with stick figures trapped inside. He told the school counselor the people who took him away deserved to burn. James made notes, and after the trial, he moved through different foster homes. I tried to keep track at first, sent cards on his birthday, but eventually lost contact. I heard he had behavioral problems, attachment issues. That's normal for kids who've experienced that level of trauma. Do you know where he is now? No. But James, he's 26. He'd be old enough to plan something like this, smart enough to wait for Halloween when children in costumes wouldn't look suspicious. We're running his name through every database we have. If he's been institutionalized, arrested, anything that leaves a paper trail, we'll find it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I answered on speaker so James could hear. "Mrs. Cole?" A man's voice, young, strained. "I have your grandchildren." My heart stopped. James was already signaling officers, getting them to trace the call. "Dylan?" I whispered. "Is that you? You remember me. Good. I wasn't sure you would. You had so many students over the years, but I remember you perfectly, Mrs. Cole. You were my favorite teacher until you destroyed my life. Dylan, please. Emma and Lucas haven't done anything wrong. Let them go." "Neither had I done anything wrong," he said, his voice rising. "I had a family. A home, parents who loved me, parents who beat you, who starved you, who locked you in dark spaces for hours. They were teaching me discipline, teaching me respect, and you had no right to judge them, to testify against them, to take me away from the only family I'd ever known." James was writing notes, holding them up. "Keep him talking. Get location detail." "Where are you?" I asked. "Where are the children?" "Somewhere you should recognize, somewhere that matters. You have until midnight, Mrs. Cole. If you're not here by then, if you call the police, if you do anything except come alone, well, you'll never see them again. And you'll spend the rest of your life knowing your grandchildren paid for what you did to me." "Dylan, please." "The old foster house. You remember where it is. Come alone." Midnight. The line went dead. James was immediately on his radio, coordinating with tactical teams. "We know where that is. Abandoned property on the outskirts of Salem. Been condemned for 5 years. He said to come alone," I said. "If he sees police, we'll be discreet. But Maggie, you're not going in there alone. This man is dangerous. He's assaulted your daughter, kidnapped 2 children. He's clearly unstable. He's traumatized," I corrected. "There's a difference. Dylan was failed by the system that was supposed to protect him after his adoptive parents went to prison. If I'd known how badly he was struggling, if I'd stayed in touch, this isn't your fault, isn't it?" I testified. I set events in motion that led to him spending his childhood in foster care, bouncing between homes, never finding stability. And now he's taken my grandchildren to make me understand what that felt like. James studied me. "You're not thinking of actually going alone, are you?" "I'm thinking that I taught second grade for 35 years. I know how to talk to traumatized children, even when those children are now adults. I know Dylan. I remember him. Maybe I can reach him. Or maybe he'll kill you and the kids both. Maggie, be realistic." I was being realistic. Realistic about the fact that Dylan had specified midnight, 2.5 hours away. Realistic that he'd been careful enough to evade capture this long, which meant he'd spot police presence immediately. Realistic that my best chance of getting Emma and Lucas back alive was doing exactly what he asked, showing up, facing him, trying to reach whatever remained of the frightened 8-year-old boy I'd once known. "I'm going," I said, "with or without police backup. But James, I need you to tell me everything you can find about Dylan in the next 2 hours. Where he's been, what happened to him, why he snapped now. If I'm going to talk him down, I need ammunition." James looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he sighed. "I'll get you everything. But Maggie, We'll have tactical teams surrounding that property. The moment things go wrong, we're coming in. Just make sure they stay out of sight. Dylan's been planning this for months, maybe years. He'll be watching. We worked fast. Within an hour, James had Dylan's history reconstructed. 17 different foster homes between ages 8 and 18. Behavioral problems, attachment disorder, depression, 3 suicide attempts. At 18, he'd aged out of the system with no family, no support, no resources. He'd drifted for years, homeless shelters, odd jobs, escalating mental health crises. 2 years ago, he'd been involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility after threatening a social worker. He'd been released 6 months ago, supposedly stabilized on medication. He was living in a halfway house, James explained. Went to therapy, took his meds, held down a job at a warehouse. By all accounts, he was doing okay. So what changed? This. James showed me a document. 3 months ago, his adoptive mother was released from prison early. Good behavior, overcrowding, the usual reasons. Dylan found out through some victim notification system. According to his therapist, who we just tracked down, it triggered a complete breakdown. All the trauma came flooding back, and he blamed me. He blamed the person who testified against his parents, who, in his mind, started the chain of events that destroyed his childhood. I looked at the clock. 10:47 p.m., 73 minutes until midnight, until I'd face Dylan Foster and try to save my grandchildren while surrounded by ghosts of choices I'd made 18 years ago. I need to go, I said. Alone, James. Just me. At least wear a wire. Let us hear what's happening. I agreed to that much. They fitted me with a microphone, gave me an earpiece I could use to signal for help if needed, equipped me with a panic button disguised as a watch. If he searches you, James started, he won't. He wants me to hear him, to understand his pain. He wants confession and witness, not violence, at least not immediately. You're betting your grandchildren's lives on that. I'm betting on my ability to reach a traumatized child, even one trapped in an adult's body. It's what I've done for 35 years. I drove alone through Halloween dark Salem, past houses still lit with jack-o'-lanterns, past groups of trick-or-treaters heading home with full bags. The old Foster house was in an undeveloped area on Salem's edge, a condemned Victorian that had been beautiful once, before neglect and abandonment turned it into something from a horror movie. Perfect for Halloween night, perfect for Dylan's sense of dramatic justice. I parked a quarter-mile away, walked the rest on foot, could feel police presence in the darkness, tactical teams positioned invisibly, waiting, hoped Dylan couldn't. The house loomed ahead, windows broken, porch sagging, and on that porch, barely visible in moonlight, 3 figures, 2 small, 1 adult, Emma and Lucas, still in their Halloween costumes, hands bound, and Dylan Foster, holding what looked like a knife, waiting for me. I took a breath, stepped forward, and prayed I could save them. Entendido. Vou continuar escrevendo os capítulos 3-10 completos de Halloween Night, cada com aproximadamente 850 palavras. Dylan Foster stood on the sagging porch of his childhood nightmare, backlit by moonlight that made him look less like a man and more like a specter of trauma given human form. He was thin, gaunt really, with hollow eyes and the particular weariness of someone who'd carried too much pain for too long. Emma and Lucas sat on the steps in front of him, hands bound with what looked like zip ties, still wearing their Halloween costumes. Emma's lab coat was torn, her fake glasses missing. Lucas's Spider-Man mask hung around his neck like a noose. Both children had been crying, but were quiet now, exhausted by terror. Mrs. Cole, Dylan said, his voice flat. You came alone. Good. I was worried you'd bring police. They're here, I said honestly, stopping 20 feet from the porch, surrounding this property. But they won't move unless I signal them or you hurt the children. I convinced them to let me talk to you first. Why? Because I taught you 2nd grade, Dylan. I remember the boy you were before everything got worse. I'm hoping to reach that boy now. He laughed, sharp, bitter. That boy died in the 7th foster home, Mrs. Cole. After the 4th family that didn't want him, after the 6th beating from kids who smelled weakness, after realizing nobody gave a damn whether he lived or died. I cared. You destroyed me. His voice rose, making Emma flinch. I had a family. The Fosters loved me. They were teaching me discipline, teaching me respect. And you testified that they were abusing me. You took me away from them. You put me in the system that ate me alive. I moved slowly closer, hands visible, non-threatening. Dylan, I need you to hear something you don't know about the Fosters. I know everything I need to know. They went to prison because of you. I spent 10 years bouncing between homes where nobody wanted me. I aged out at 18 with nothing. No family, no support, no future. That's on you, Mrs. Cole. That's your sin. The Fosters killed a child, I said quietly. Dylan went very still. What? Before you. They had another foster child, a girl named Melissa, 7 years old. During the investigation after I testified, police found evidence that Melissa didn't run away like the Fosters claimed. They found her remains buried in the backyard. Cause of death, blunt force trauma from repeated beatings. You're lying. I'm not. Detective Rodriguez can confirm it. He worked the case. The Fosters were convicted of Melissa's murder along with child abuse against you. They're not getting out of prison, Dylan. Ever. Because they didn't just hurt you. They killed another child. And if I hadn't testified when I did, you would have been next. Dylan's face crumpled. The knife he'd been holding, visible but not brandished, dropped slightly. No, they wouldn't. My parents loved me. They weren't your parents. They were predators who took vulnerable children from the system and hurt them. I'm sorry the system failed you after that. I'm sorry you spent years without proper support or care. But Dylan, removing you from that house saved your life. Emma spoke then, her voice small but clear. Mr. Dylan, you're scaring us. Please let us go. We didn't do anything wrong. Neither did I. Dylan's control was fracturing. I was 8 years old, and they took me away from the only home I knew. They put me in houses where nobody wanted me, where bigger kids hurt me, where adults saw me as a problem to manage. I tried to be good. I tried so hard, but nobody cared. I cared, I repeated. I still care. That's why I'm here, Dylan. Not just for Emma and Lucas, though they matter enormously, but for you too. Because you're right. The system failed you terribly. After I testified, I should have stayed in your life, should have advocated for better placement, better care. I didn't. That's my failure. That's what I'm sorry for. Sorry doesn't fix 18 years. No, it doesn't. But Dylan, look at what you're doing right now. You've kidnapped 2 innocent children. You've assaulted their mother. You've terrorized a family to make a point about your own pain. Is this who you want to be? Is this what you want your story to be? My story is already written by people like you who pretend to help, but really just destroy. Then let's write a different ending, I said. Right now. You can let Emma and Lucas go. You can surrender. You can get real help, not the institutional band-aids you've been getting, but actual therapeutic support for the trauma you've endured. I'll advocate for that. I'll testify on your behalf about the failures of the system, about the abuse you suffered, about how you're a victim of circumstances beyond your control. I'm not a victim. You're both, I interrupted. Victim and perpetrator, traumatized child and dangerous adult. Both things can be true. But Dylan, listen to me. This moment right here determines which one defines you moving forward. Let the children go. End this before it gets worse. Lucas started crying again, soft and hopeless. Dylan looked down at him, and for a moment I saw something crack in his expression. Empathy, recognition, horror at what he'd become. They're the age I was, he whispered, when you took me away. Yes, and they're terrified, just like you were terrified. You have the power right now to make a different choice than the Fosters made. You can choose not to hurt them. Dylan's hand shook. The knife blade caught moonlight. Behind me, I could sense police tensing, preparing to move if this went sideways. I wanted you to understand, Dylan said, his voice breaking. I wanted you to feel what I felt, losing everything, having no control, being completely powerless. I do understand, and Dylan, I'm so sorry for the pain you've endured, truly. But taking it out on my grandchildren doesn't balance the scales. It just creates more trauma, more pain, more victims. I don't know how to stop being angry. I know. But you can start by making one good choice. Right now, let them go. For what felt like hours, but was probably 30 seconds, Dylan Foster stood frozen between past and future, between the traumatized child he'd been and the man he might still become. Then, slowly, he knelt and cut the zip ties binding Emma's wrists. Run, he told her. Both of you. Run to your grandmother. They didn't need telling twice. Emma grabbed Lucas, and they bolted down the porch steps, crashed into my arms. I held them tight while calling out to the darkness. Stand down. He's releasing them. Dylan remained on the porch, knife dropped, hands raised. I'm sorry, he said to the children, his voice hollow. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to be this person. I know, I said quietly, my face buried in Emma's hair. Lucas clutching my waist. I know, Dylan. Police swarmed then, tactical teams emerging from darkness, surrounding Dylan, ordering him down. He complied without resistance, face pressed to rotten porch wood while they cuffed him. As they led him to a patrol car, he looked back at me once. Did you mean it? About advocating for treatment? I meant it. Why? After what I did? Because you're right. The system failed you. And I failed you by not fighting harder to prevent that. I can't fix the past, Dylan, but I can try to impact your future. They put him in the car, drove him away from the house where his abuse had occurred, where he'd held my grandchildren hostage, where, maybe, his healing could finally begin. Detective Rodriguez appeared at my elbow. You took a hell of a risk, Maggie. I took the only risk that had a chance of working. We went to the hospital. Emma and Lucas were examined, treated for dehydration and minor injuries, given sedatives to help them sleep. Rachel remained unconscious, machines breathing for her while her brain tried to heal. I sat between my grandchildren's hospital beds, holding both their hands, and wondered what kind of world creates Dylan Foster's. Children so broken by the systems designed to save them that they become dangers themselves. And I wondered how many more there were, waiting in the shadows, and what I could do to reach them before tragedy required it. Perfeito! Vou continuar escrevendo os capítulos 4, 10 completos, com aproximadamente 850 palavras cada. The fluorescent lights in Salem Hospital's pediatric ward hummed with the particular frequency that marks institutional spaces, neither comforting nor threatening, just relentlessly present. Emma and Lucas slept in adjacent beds, sedated after their ordeal, their small bodies motionless beneath thin hospital blankets that smelled of industrial detergent. I sat between them, one hand on each bed rail, and tried to process the night that felt both endless and impossibly compressed. It was 3 a.m. Halloween had technically ended, but the trauma it brought would last considerably longer. Detective Rodriguez found me there, carrying terrible coffee in foam cups that leaked through napkins he'd wrapped around them. Maggie, he said quietly, Rachel's doctor wants to talk to you. I followed him to the ICU, my legs moving on autopilot while my mind replayed Dylan's face. The moment he'd dropped the knife, the way he'd apologized to children he'd terrorized, the particular brokenness that comes from being failed by everyone who should have protected you. Dr. Patel met us outside Rachel's room. She looked exhausted, her scrubs rumpled, her dark hair escaping from a surgical cap. Mrs. Cole, your daughter's scans show significant brain swelling from the assault. We've induced a coma to reduce pressure, but the next 72 hours are critical. Will she wake up? The question came out steadier than I felt. We don't know yet. The injuries are serious but not necessarily catastrophic. She's young, healthy, strong. Those factors work in her favor. Can I see her? Of course. But Mrs. Cole, you should know. We found defensive wounds on Rachel's hands and arms. She fought back. Whoever attacked her, she didn't go down easily. That was my daughter. Stubborn, fierce, fighting until the end. I walked into her room and looked at the woman who'd once been my baby, who'd grown into someone brave enough to become a nurse, strong enough to raise 2 children mostly alone after her husband left when the twins were infants. Rachel's face was swollen, bruised purple and yellow under bandages. Machines beeped steadily, measuring heartbeat and oxygen and brain activity I couldn't interpret. I took her hand, warm despite everything, still alive. I got them back, I whispered. Emma and Lucas, they're safe. So you need to wake up, Rachel. You need to come back because those babies need their mother and I need my daughter. No response, just the steady beep of monitors, the mechanical whoosh of the ventilator breathing for her. James found me 30 minutes later, still holding Rachel's hand, tears I didn't remember shedding drying on my face. Maggie, you need rest. You've been up for 22 hours. I can't sleep. Not while Rachel's like this. Not while Dylan's. Where is he? What happened after they took him? Psychiatric hold at county. He'll be evaluated, then we'll determine charges. Given his mental health history and what happened tonight, he's looking at mandatory institutionalization rather than prison. Maybe years of treatment. Good. That's what he needs. Treatment, not punishment. James studied me. You know, most grandmothers whose children were kidnapped wouldn't be advocating for their kidnapper's mental health care. Most grandmothers didn't teach that kidnapper in 2nd grade, didn't see the bruises, didn't testify at his abuse trial, didn't watch him get swallowed by a system that was supposed to save him. I looked at Rachel's unconscious face. James, I've been thinking about Dylan all night, about how many Dylans there are. Kids we remove from abusive homes who never get adequate support afterward. We save them from immediate danger, but abandon them to long-term trauma. You can't fix that, Maggie. It's systemic, institutional. So we change the system, create something better. I have time now that I'm retired. I have resources, my pension, James's life insurance. This house I own outright. What if we started something? A program for kids aging out of foster care. Housing, therapy, job training, mentorship. The kind of support Dylan never got. That's ambitious. It's necessary. How many more Dylans are out there, carrying trauma and rage with nobody helping them process it? How many more families will be destroyed because we save children but don't help them heal? James was quiet for a moment. You know what you're describing? It's basically what Rachel does. She's been volunteering with youth programs, working with at-risk kids through her church. She talks about it all the time, says the system fails them after removal. I looked at my daughter, at the woman who dedicated her career to helping others, who'd raised compassionate children despite struggling as a single mother, who'd fought her attacker even knowing she was outmatched. Then when she wakes up, I said firmly, not if, we'll do it together. Build something that honors what happened tonight by preventing it from happening to others. And if Dylan had killed the kids, would you still want to help people like him? The question hit hard. I thought about it honestly. I don't know. But he didn't kill them. He let them go when I reached the frightened child underneath the dangerous adult. That child deserves the help he never got, and other children deserve not to become what Dylan became. Emma appeared in the doorway then, a nurse behind her looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cole. She woke up asking for you and her mother. It's fine. I held out my arms and Emma ran to me, her thin body shaking with sobs I'd been expecting since the moment we'd gotten to the hospital. I've got you, baby. I've got you. Is Mommy going to die? No, I said with more certainty than I felt. She's going to fight her way back to us, just like she fought tonight. Your mother is the strongest person I know. Stronger than you, Grandma? I smiled through my tears. Much stronger. She raised you and Lucas alone. That takes more strength than I ever had. Lucas appeared next, dragging a blanket, his Spider-Man costume replaced with hospital pajamas that swamped his small frame. I had a bad dream, he said. His voice was so small, so young, 6 years old, and he'd experienced something no child should face. I gathered both grandchildren close, held them while machines beeped and nurses worked, and the hospital continued its 24-hour cycle of crisis and healing. Somewhere in this building, Dylan Foster was sedated, restrained, beginning a different kind of treatment than what Emma and Lucas would need, but treatment nonetheless. Tell me about your bad dream, I said to Lucas. The man, Dylan, he said we had to pay for something you did. What did you do, Grandma? Why did we have to pay? How did you explain complex trauma to a 6-year-old? How did you make sense of pain that stretched across decades, of choices that saved lives but created different suffering? I helped Dylan when he was your age, I said carefully. He was being hurt by the people who were supposed to take care of him. I told other grown-ups so they could help him. But after that, Dylan didn't get enough help. He carried his hurt inside him for a very long time, until it made him do scary things. Is he still going to hurt us? No. He's getting help now, and we're going to make sure he gets better, and that other kids who get hurt like Dylan was don't become scary when they grow up. Emma, always sharp, always thinking, looked up at me. How? I don't know yet, but your mom and I, when she wakes up, we're going to figure it out together. The sun rose while we sat there, Halloween giving way to November 1st, to All Saints' Day, to the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but knew with certainty needed to exist. Rachel would wake up. She had to. Because this work, transforming trauma into healing, preventing future Dylans, creating the support system that should have existed 18 years ago, this work required all of us. Family isn't just who you're born to or who you raise. It's also who you choose to fight for, to advocate for, to refuse to abandon, even when abandoning would be easier. Dylan Foster was my student for 1 year, 18 years ago, but that year created responsibility that didn't end when he left my classroom. I understood that now, and I was going to spend however many years I had left making sure that responsibility meant something real, something that prevented other children from carrying trauma, that twisted them into people they never wanted to become. Rachel woke up on day 4. I was reading to Emma and Lucas in the hospital playroom when a nurse found me. Mrs. Cole, your daughter is conscious. She's asking for you. I ran. Actually ran. Despite being 61 and out of practice, my heart pounding with hope I'd been afraid to feel. Rachel's room was crowded with medical staff checking vitals, adjusting equipment, asking questions to assess cognitive function. Mom? Rachel's voice was hoarse from the ventilator tube they'd removed an hour ago, but it was her voice, alive and present. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. The kids, they're safe. They're fine. They're down the hall playing with the therapy dogs. They're going to be so happy you're awake. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I tried to fight him. When he came up to my car in the parking lot, when he said he had Emma and Lucas, I tried to— You did fight. The doctor said you have defensive wounds. You fought as hard as you could. He hit me with something. I don't remember much after that, just waking up here. She looked around the ICU, confused and frightened. How long have I been out? 4 days. Halloween was October 31st. Today is November 4th. Halloween. The word seemed to trigger memory. Oh my God. Mom, I was going to pick up the kids at 6. I had their costumes in my car. He was waiting in the parking lot. Dylan Foster, I said quietly. He was my student 18 years ago. He blamed me for testifying against his abusive adoptive parents. He wanted revenge. Rachel processed this slowly, her brain still recovering. But the kids are okay? Really okay? Physically, yes. Emotionally, they'll need therapy. We all will. But Rachel, they're alive because Dylan let them go. Because I was able to reach him before things got worse. You went alone, didn't you? Rachel knew me too well. Mom, that was insane. It was necessary, and it worked. I squeezed her hand gently, but we need to talk about what comes next, about what we're going to do with this. Over the next week, as Rachel recovered, and Emma and Lucas started therapy, and Dylan remained in psychiatric evaluation, I began researching, called old colleagues from my teaching days, contacted social workers I'd worked with on previous abuse cases, reached out to advocacy groups focused on foster care reform. The statistics were damning. Kids who aged out of foster care faced astronomical rates of homelessness, unemployment, incarceration, mental health crises. The system removed them from danger but provided minimal support afterward, expecting traumatized 18-year-olds to navigate adult life with resources most advantaged kids didn't face until their mid-20s. We could start small, I told Rachel during one of our strategy sessions in her hospital room. A handful of kids first year. Provide housing. We could convert the attic into apartments, offer therapy, job training, life skills classes, create the support structure Dylan never had. That costs money, Mom. A lot of money. I have money. The house is paid off. I have Dad's life insurance still mostly untouched. My pension covers my expenses. We could fund the first few years ourselves, then apply for grants once we have proof of concept. And what about Emma and Lucas? They're going to need stability after what they've been through, not grandma running a halfway house for traumatized young adults. She was right. I couldn't put my grandchildren through more instability. But I also couldn't let Dylan's story be meaningless, couldn't let what happened Halloween night be just another tragedy without transformation. What if we partnered with existing organizations? Rachel suggested. There are already groups doing this work. We could support them financially, volunteer our time, advocate for policy changes, make impact without turning our lives upside down. It was the sensible approach, the responsible one. But something in me resisted settling for sensible when revolutionary felt both necessary and possible. The decision came from unexpected source, Dylan himself. His psychiatric evaluation concluded he was competent to stand trial but severely mentally ill, requiring long-term treatment. The prosecutor offered a deal, 15 years in a psychiatric facility with possibility of release if he demonstrated sustained improvement and posed no danger to others. Dylan accepted, and he asked to speak to me before sentencing. James accompanied me to the secure psychiatric unit where Dylan waited, medicated but lucid, his face carrying the same lost quality I remembered from when he was 8 years old. Mrs. Cole, he said quietly, I wanted to apologize, not just for what I did Halloween night, but for letting myself become this, for not getting help sooner, for choosing revenge over healing. Apology accepted, I said. But Dylan, I have something to ask you. I'm thinking about starting a program for kids aging out of foster care, housing, therapy, support, all the things you didn't get. Would you be willing to participate? Not now, obviously, but once you're further into treatment, once you're stable. Would you talk to these kids? Tell your story as a warning, as a roadmap of what not to become? He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Why would you want that? After what I did, because your story matters. Not just the kidnapping, the years before, the failures of the system, the trauma that went untreated until it became dangerous. Kids need to hear that, need to understand that asking for help isn't weakness, that healing is possible if you do the work. I don't deserve. This isn't about deserving. It's about using pain to prevent more pain. Will you think about it? Dylan nodded slowly. Yeah, I'll think about it. As we left, James said, you know he might never be safe to release, right? Might spend his whole life institutionalized. I know, but at least he'll be getting treatment. At least he'll have a chance. That evening, I sat with Rachel and the twins in Rachel's hospital room. She was being discharged tomorrow, and told them my plan. Not a halfway house, not a full transformation of our lives, but something manageable, partnering with existing organizations, volunteering our time, using my teaching experience and Rachel's nursing background to mentor kids transitioning out of foster care, and maybe, eventually, helping Dylan tell his story to those kids, showing them what happened when trauma went untreated, when the system failed to follow through, when anger became more familiar than hope. Can we help? Emma asked. When we're older? Yes, I said. When you're older, after you've had time to heal from what happened, you can help if you want to. But for now, your job is to be kids, to go to school and play and feel safe. Are we safe now? Lucas asked. I thought about that honestly. Dylan's in a hospital where he'll get help. He can't hurt anyone else. But safety isn't just about bad people being locked up. It's about building a world where people like Dylan get help before they become dangerous. That's what we're trying to do. Will it work? Emma's 8-year-old skepticism was earned. I don't know, but we have to try. Perfeito. Vou continuar com os capítulos finais 6 de 10, cada com aproximadamente 850 palavras. The organization started small, like most meaningful things do. Rachel and I, working from my kitchen table while Emma and Lucas did homework in the living room, creating mission statements and filing paperwork for nonprofit status. We called it Dylan's Hope, not to glorify what he'd done, but to honor what he could have been with proper support. The name sparked controversy. Some people understood. Others thought we were sympathizing with a kidnapper. Let them talk, Rachel said during one particularly vicious Facebook thread where strangers debated whether we were heroes or fools. We're not doing this for public approval. We're doing it because the system failed Dylan and it's still failing kids like him. Our first partner was a local foster care agency that had been trying to create transition programs for years, but lacked funding. They had 12 kids aging out that year, 18-year-olds about to be released into adulthood with minimal preparation, no family support, and trauma that would take decades to unpack. We started with 3, Marcus, Destiny, and James. All had spent their childhoods bouncing between foster homes. All were terrified of what came next. Marcus was quiet, watchful, with eyes that tracked exits in every room like he was always planning escape routes. Destiny was loud, defensive, using anger as armor against vulnerability. James just seemed exhausted, like he'd been fighting for so long he'd forgotten what peace felt like. What do you want? I asked them during our first meeting at the community center we'd rented for weekly sessions. Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want for your lives? They stared at me like it was a trick question. Maybe nobody had asked them that before. A place to live, Marcus finally said, where nobody kicks me out when they get tired of me. A job, Destiny added. Something that pays enough so I'm not always stressed about money. To sleep without nightmares, James said quietly. That's all. Just one night without dreaming about the bad stuff. We built the program around those needs, concrete and emotional, practical and psychological. Partnered with landlords willing to rent to young adults with spotty backgrounds. Connected with employers who'd give foster kids a chance. Hired a trauma therapist who specialized in attachment disorders and PTSD. And slowly, tentatively, it started working. Marcus got a job at an auto shop, discovered he had natural mechanical skills. Destiny enrolled in community college, studying to be a social worker because, as she said, somebody needs to fix this broken system and it might as well be people who survived it. James was harder. His trauma ran deeper, manifested in panic attacks and self-harm and nights when he'd show up at Rachel's ER having done something dangerous. But he kept coming back, kept trying. That counted for something. 6 months in, we held our first success celebration. Modest, just pizza and soda in the community center. But Marcus had been at his job for 90 days without missing a shift. Destiny had made Dean's List. James had gone 2 weeks without self-harming. You know what I appreciate most? Marcus said during the celebration. You don't make us pretend we're okay. You let us be messed up while we figure out how to be better. That became our unofficial motto. Let's be messed up together while figuring out better. Dylan wrote from the psychiatric facility. Short letters at first. Stilted and awkward, clearly supervised by his therapist. Gradually, they became more honest, more raw. I've been in group therapy with other people who hurt others. We talk about what led us here. For me, it was always about family, losing it, wanting it, destroying the possibility of ever having it by doing what I did Halloween night. My therapist says trauma isn't an excuse, but it is an explanation, that I can take responsibility for my actions while acknowledging the systemic failures that created conditions for those actions. I don't know if I'll ever be well enough to be released. But Mrs. Cole, thank you for creating something that might prevent other kids from becoming what I became. That matters more than anything I could say to make up for what I did. I shared parts of his letters, with permission, with Marcus, Destiny, and James. They needed to see the trajectory, what happened when trauma went untreated, when anger became identity, when the system failed so completely that violence felt like the only language left. I could have been him, James said after reading one letter. I was headed that direction, still am some days. But you're here, Rachel pointed out, getting help, doing the work, making different choices. Because somebody's helping me, James said. That's the only difference between me and Dylan Foster. He didn't have this. I do. Emma and Lucas, meanwhile, were processing their own trauma. Their therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Patel, who specialized in childhood PTSD, said they were remarkably resilient but would carry what happened for the rest of their lives. They'll have triggers, Dr. Patel explained. Halloween, darkness, strangers, being separated from you. But with support, they'll learn to manage those triggers, to live full lives despite what happened. Emma started having nightmares where she couldn't find me, would wake up screaming my name. I moved a cot into her room, slept there for months, until she felt secure enough to let me return to my own bed. Lucas developed selective mutism, would go hours without speaking, especially around men he didn't know. We worked with speech therapists, played games that made communication less threatening, gave him space to be silent when silence felt safer than words. They were healing, slowly, with setbacks and hard days and moments when what Dylan had done felt impossibly large, but they were healing, as was Rachel. The physical injuries had mostly resolved, but the psychological impact lingered. She jumped at sudden sounds, avoided hospital parking lots after dark, had installed a security system in her apartment that rivaled Fort Knox. I'm angry, she told me one evening while we worked on grant applications for Dylan's Hope. Not just at Dylan, at the system that created him, at every social worker who didn't fight hard enough, every foster parent who gave up, every teacher who saw him struggling and passed him along. We failed that boy long before he kidnapped my children. We're trying to do better now. Are we, though? We're helping 12 kids. There are thousands aging out every year, thousands more still in the system. What we're doing is a drop in an ocean. Drops create ripples, I said. Those 12 kids we're helping, they'll help others. Destiny wants to be a social worker. Marcus talks about starting a vocational training program for foster kids. James, if he makes it, and I think he will, he'll have a story that might save someone else. And if they don't make it, if James hurts himself too badly one night, if Destiny gets overwhelmed and drops out, if Marcus loses his job and slides back into homelessness, then we try again, and we learn what didn't work, and we adjust. Rachel, we're not going to fix the system, but we might help enough individuals that the system has to notice and change. She was quiet for a moment. Then, do you think Dylan would have made it if he'd had this program? I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe his trauma was already too deep, his attachment issues too severe, but he deserved the chance to find out. That's all we're trying to give these kids, a chance. 1 year after Halloween, we held our first annual fundraiser. Small, maybe 50 people, raised $8,000 mostly from my former teaching colleagues and Rachel's nursing friends. But it was something. And at that fundraiser, Marcus stood up and spoke about what Dylan's Hope had meant to him, how having stable housing and consistent support and people who believed he could succeed despite his past, how that had literally saved his life. I was planning to kill myself, he said, his voice steady despite the admission. The week before I met Mrs. Cole and Rachel, I had pills saved up, a plan. Then they offered me this program, said they believed I could do better, and I thought, okay, one more try, just one more. He looked at the audience, at Rachel and me sitting together in the front row, at Emma and Lucas, who'd come to support the organization bearing their kidnapper's name. That one more try became 90 days at a job, became 6 months sober, became believing maybe I'm worth the space I take up in the world. That's what this program does. It gives kids like me one more try. Sometimes that's all we need. The audience applauded. I cried. Rachel gripped my hand. And I thought about Dylan in his psychiatric facility, about how different his story might have been if someone had given him one more try 18 years ago, before trauma calcified into violence. We couldn't change the past, but we were building a different future, one traumatized kid at a time. Halloween came again. inevitable as seasons changing. Emma and Lucas wanted to skip trick-or-treating altogether, wanted to pretend the day didn't exist, but their therapist suggested facing the trigger might help more than avoiding it. We'll do it differently this time, I promised. Together, safe, new traditions, instead of avoiding old trauma. So we hosted a Halloween party at my house, small, controlled, with people we trusted. Marcus came, bringing his girlfriend Sarah, who he'd met at work. Destiny showed up with her study group from community college. James came hesitantly, staying near the door like he might bolt any second. Rachel was there with a new boyfriend, a kind paramedic named David, who'd asked her out after responding to a call at her hospital. They'd been dating 3 months, taking it slow, but he was good with the kids and didn't push Rachel to process her trauma faster than she could manage. We carved pumpkins, made caramel apples, told ghost stories that were more funny than scary. And at 6 p.m., the time when Dylan had attacked Rachel last year, we held a moment of silence. This is when everything changed, I said to the group. 1 year ago tonight, a traumatized young man tried to destroy our family. He failed, but his attempt taught us something important. Hurt people, and we can break that cycle by helping hurt people heal. To healing? Rachel said, raising her apple cider. To healing, everyone echoed. Emma asked if we could visit the old foster house, now demolished, replaced with a small park the city had named Hope Park after our organization. We drove there as the sun set, walked the path where Dylan had held them hostage. I'm not scared anymore, Emma said, though her grip on my hand suggested otherwise. Well, I'm a little scared, but I'm also proud. Proud of what, baby? That something bad turned into something good, that Dylan's hope helps people, that we didn't just stay hurt. Lucas, who'd been quiet all evening, spoke up. Do you think Dylan knows that we're okay? I think so, I said. I write to him sometimes, tell him about the program, about kids we're helping. He writes back, says it gives him hope that his story had a purpose. Can we write to him? Emma asked. Rachel started to object. Protecting her children from further contact with their kidnapper was instinct, but Emma cut her off. Mom, I want to. Not because I forgive him, but because maybe if he knows we're not broken, he'll work harder to get better. So we did. That night, back at my house, Emma and Lucas and I wrote a letter to Dylan Foster. Dear Dylan, this is Emma and Lucas. You probably remember us from Halloween last year. You scared us really bad. We had nightmares for a long time. But we're writing because we want you to know something. We're okay. We go to therapy, and we're learning to be brave again. And our grandma and mom started a program called Dylan's Hope that helps kids who aged out of foster care like you did. We learned that you didn't have anyone to help you when you were our age. That must have been really lonely and scary. We're sorry that happened to you. We're not sorry you're in the hospital getting help. You need that. But we're sorry the system didn't help you before you got so hurt that you hurt other people. Grandma says hurt people. But she also says healing people heal people. So we hope you're healing, and we hope when you get better someday, you'll help other people heal too. We're not scared of you anymore. We're not angry anymore. We're just hoping you get better. Emma and Lucas Morrison. I mailed it the next day. 2 weeks later, Dylan responded. His letter was short, handwritten in shaky script, clearly drafted and redrafted multiple times. Dear Emma and Lucas, thank you for your letter. You didn't have to write to me, but you did. That shows you're brave and kind in ways I wasn't when I was hurt. I'm getting help, real help. Group therapy, medication, learning how to process trauma without hurting others. It's hard. Some days I want to give up. Then I remember that Mrs. Cole, your grandma, and your mom are helping kids because of what I did. And I think maybe if I get better, I can help too. I can't undo what I did to you, but I can try to live a life that makes my mistakes mean something. Your letter helps me remember why. I hope you're brave. I hope you're kind. I hope you never become what I became. We framed the letter, not to celebrate him, but to remember that transformation is possible even in the darkest circumstances. Perfeito. Vou finalizar com os últimos 3 capítulos, 8 e 10, de Halloween Night, cada com aproximadamente 850 palavras. Dylan's first parole hearing came 18 months after his sentencing. He'd been a model patient in the psychiatric facility, attending all therapy sessions, taking medications as prescribed, participating in vocational training programs that taught him woodworking and computer skills. His lawyer called to ask if I'd testify. Your statement could significantly impact the board's decision. They need to know Dylan has support on the outside, people willing to help him transition back to society. He's not ready, Rachel said immediately when I told her. Mom, he kidnapped my children, assaulted me, put me in a coma, and you're going to help him get out? I'm going to tell the truth, that Dylan's getting treatment. making progress, but needs more time. That releasing him prematurely would be dangerous for him and everyone else. So you're testifying against his release? I'm testifying for his long-term recovery, which might mean keeping him institutionalized longer. The board needs to hear from someone who knows his history, his progress, and his realistic potential. The hearing room was institutional beige, filled with board members who looked tired and overworked. Dylan sat at a table with his lawyer, wearing civilian clothes instead of facility scrubs, his hair neatly trimmed, his face carefully neutral. When my turn came, I spoke honestly. Dylan Foster was my student 18 years ago. I testified that his adoptive parents were abusing him, which led to his removal and their imprisonment. The system that was supposed to help him after that removal failed catastrophically. He spent his childhood and adolescence in unstable placements with inadequate mental health support. That failure created conditions for what happened Halloween night 2 years ago. One board member interrupted, "Are you excusing his actions?" "No, I'm explaining context. Dylan kidnapped my grandchildren and assaulted my daughter. Those are serious crimes that required serious consequences, but they were also the actions of someone who'd been failed by every system meant to protect him. Do you think he's ready for release?" I looked at Dylan directly. "No, not yet. He's made tremendous progress. His therapists confirm that. But 18 years of untreated trauma doesn't heal in 18 months. Dylan needs more time in structured treatment before he's ready for independent living." Dylan's face showed surprise, then something like relief. His lawyer looked disappointed. "However," I continued, "I want the board to know that when Dylan is ready, when his treatment team confirms he's stable and no longer poses a danger, he'll have support waiting. My organization, Dylan's Hope, will help him transition. We'll provide housing, employment assistance, continued therapy. He won't be released into the same circumstances that created his crisis." The board deliberated for 20 minutes. Their decision, parole denied, to be reconsidered in 2 years with ongoing treatment and positive reports from facility staff. Dylan caught my eye as they let him out, mouthed "thank you" in a way that suggested he understood I'd protected him from himself by arguing for more time. Outside, Rachel was waiting with Emma and Lucas. "What happened?" "They denied parole. He stays 2 more years minimum." Emma looked conflicted. "Is that good?" "It's right," I said. "Dylan's getting better, but he's not better yet. Sending him out too soon would set him up to fail. This way, he has more time to heal properly." Dylan's hope grew beyond what Rachel and I had imagined. By year 3, we were serving 42 young adults transitioning out of foster care. We'd hired staff, opened a proper office, secured major grants from foundations that believed in our model. Marcus had become our peer mentor coordinator, using his own experience to guide newer participants, showing them that stability was possible. Destiny finished her social work degree and joined our team full-time, bringing the perspective of someone who'd lived what she was trying to fix. James struggled more, had setbacks, hospitalizations, moments when we thought we'd lose him, but he kept coming back, kept trying. His perseverance taught me something important. Healing isn't linear, isn't neat, isn't always successful by traditional measures. Sometimes, survival is success enough. We started receiving inquiries from other cities, wanting to replicate our model. Rachel and I traveled to Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, training social workers and foster care professionals in our approach. Trauma-informed care, long-term commitment, treating young adults as people with potential rather than problems to be managed. "You've created something meaningful," James Rodriguez told me during one of our check-ins. He'd stayed involved as an advisor, bringing his decades of law enforcement experience. "This is what justice should look like, not just punishment, but transformation." "We're just doing what should have been done 18 years ago," I said. "Dylan should have had this support. If he had, maybe Halloween 2 years ago would have been just another holiday." Emma and Lucas, now 10 and 8, had become unofficial ambassadors for the organization. They spoke at fundraisers about their experience, about forgiveness and healing, and choosing not to let trauma define you. "People think we're weird for helping an organization named after the man who kidnapped us," Emma told one donor event, "but Grandma taught us that hurt people, and if we can help prevent more hurt people from becoming dangerous people, then what happened to us meant something." Rachel had moved on in her own way, still carried trauma, still jumped at unexpected sounds, but had built a life beyond that night. She and David got married in a small ceremony the previous spring, was talking about having another baby, giving Emma and Lucas a sibling who wouldn't carry Halloween's shadow. "Would you be scared?" I asked her when she first mentioned pregnancy. "After everything?" "Terrified," she admitted. "But I'm not letting Dylan Foster take my future along with that night. I want more children, want to raise them in a world where we're actively trying to fix the systems that broke him. The day Rachel told me she was pregnant was the same day we received a letter from Dylan's facility. He'd completed his vocational program with highest honors, had been accepted into an online college program to study psychology, wanted to eventually work with traumatized youth. I know I can't undo what I did, he wrote, but maybe I can use what I learned from my mistakes to help others avoid those mistakes. Thank you for believing that's possible. 4 years after Halloween night, Dylan Foster was released from the psychiatric facility on conditional parole. He was 29 years old, medicated and stable, with a sponsor, me, and a comprehensive release plan. His first night of freedom was spent in a small apartment we'd secured through Dylan's Hope, the same program that had helped Marcus, Destiny, James, and now dozens of others. He had employment lined up at a community mental health center, would continue intensive therapy twice weekly, would check in daily with his parole officer, and he'd asked to meet with Emma and Lucas. Rachel initially refused. Absolutely not. He traumatized my children. Why would I let him near them again? Because they asked, I said quietly. Emma, specifically. She wants to see that he's better, wants to believe healing is real. We arranged it carefully. Therapist present, neutral location, the community center where Dylan's Hope held meetings, strictly supervised. Dylan sat across from my grandchildren, now 11 and 9, and looked at them with eyes that carried more pain than anger. I'm sorry, he said simply. That's all I can say that matters. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for scaring you. I'm sorry your Halloween will never be just about candy and costumes again. Emma studied him with that serious expression she'd inherited from Rachel. Are you better now? I'm better than I was. I'll probably always be working on getting better. That's what therapy taught me. Healing isn't a destination, it's a practice. Grandma says hurt people, but she also says healing people heal people. Which one are you? Dylan thought about that. I was a hurt person who hurt people. Now I'm trying to be a healing person who helps people heal. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. Lucas, quieter but just as brave, asked, why did you do it? Why us? Because I was angry at your grandmother for something that happened 18 years ago, something that actually saved my life, but I was too hurt to see it that way. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt, losing family, feeling powerless. I chose wrong, hurt innocent people to make a point that didn't need making. Do you still want to hurt people? No. Now I want to help people, especially kids who feel as angry and lost as I did. I want to show them that there are better choices than the ones I made. The meeting lasted 30 minutes. Afterward, Emma told her therapist, I'm not scared of him anymore. He's just sad. Really, really sad. Dylan started work at the mental health center, running support groups for young adults with trauma histories. He was good at it. His own experiences made him credible. His genuine remorse made him empathetic. His hard-won stability made him hopeful. He and Marcus became unlikely friends. Two men who'd been failed by the system, who'd made different choices at critical moments, who were now trying to prevent others from following either of their paths. On Halloween, 5 years after the kidnapping, Dylan's Hope held its annual fundraiser. We'd grown to serve 127 young adults across 3 cities. Destiny was opening a second office in Detroit. James, miraculously still alive and fighting, had gotten his GED and was taking college classes online. And Dylan was there, not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that transformation was possible, even in the most broken circumstances. He didn't speak publicly, wasn't ready for that. Might never be. But he helped set up tables, greeted participants, and when Marcus introduced him to a new kid who just aged out of foster care and looked terrified, Dylan said, I know it feels impossible, but you're not alone. We've all been where you are, and we're going to help you get somewhere better. Later, as the fundraiser wound down, Dylan approached me hesitantly. Mrs. Cole, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it? Testifying against the Fosters? Knowing what happened to me after? I thought about that honestly. I regret that you suffered. I regret that the system failed you, but I don't regret saving your life, even though you couldn't see it as saving at the time. If I had to do it again, knowing everything that would happen, including Halloween 5 years ago, I'd still testify. Because you're alive, Dylan. You're getting better. You're helping others. That matters. His eyes filled with tears. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. That's what family does, I said. Not the family you're born into necessarily, but the family you choose, the family that chooses you back. Emma and Lucas ran past, chasing each other in a game of tag that had nothing to do with trauma or kidnapping or Halloween 5 years ago. They were just kids again, as much as they could be, carrying their scars but not defined by them. Rachel stood with David and their newborn daughter Grace, named for the grace we'd all needed to heal, to forgive, to move forward. And I stood in a community center full of young adults who'd been failed by systems meant to protect them, who were learning that failure didn't have to be permanent, that hurt people could become healing people if given proper support. Dylan's hope had started as response to one man's crime, but it had become something larger, a model for how communities could support their most vulnerable members, how trauma could be transformed into purpose, how the worst nights could lead to brighter mornings. Halloween would always carry weight in our family, would always be the night when everything changed. But 5 years later, it was also the anniversary of when we'd chosen healing over hatred, transformation over vengeance, hope over despair. The night when we'd learned that some sins lead to salvation, if you're brave enough to do the work of redemption. Thank you very much for watching. Share with those who also like stories, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you liked my story. Cheers.